From a defabricated garden shed in Rockland County, New York, USA, this is Stand Up with Pete Dominic. On today's episode, a look at the historical significance of perceived media bias amongst cultural and political movements, and also puberty. And now, the podcast host who's still waiting for puberty to end so he can finally show some serious hair growth, Pete Dominic!
Thank you very much, Pete Co. It's great to have you back opening the program. And we do have one more installment of Pete Co.'s Annoying American Abroad coming up this week. Joining me today, Maura, Quint, and Dr. Jason Johnson. Great conversations with both of them. Enlightening, informative, and lots of laughs with both Jason and Maura. I think you're going to like them. A great way to kick off the week and to kick off August, folks. It is August 1st, and happy birthday to my pop, by the way. His birthday was yesterday, and love you, Dad. Thank you very much for all that you have done and do for me and for my family and for the girls, and I'll call you later. Can't wait to talk to my dad, as I do a few times a week at least. Probably should reach out every week. I don't want to annoy the guy. He's very busy. He's driving his Corvette on a racetrack. Watkins Glen. Check him out if you're down near Geneva, New York, folks. Happy birthday, Pop. Happy August, everybody. And, August 1st means your credit card might have expired. So if you are subscribed to a certain service or podcast, that podcast or service is no longer getting your payment. This happens every month. I don't think I've ever mentioned it on the podcast, but I did get an email from a listener named Paul S., who wrote me the most wonderful email yesterday. And I'm actually going to read you this email from Paul. He is a longtime listener who said, Pete, I finally got around to checking my Patreon payments, and I was horrified to discover that my payment for your show had failed for as long as it did. The subject of this email, by the way, is horrified listener. And Paul writes, I've been listening to and paying for your excellent show for many years, so I can only say that even in this supposedly post-Trump world, we tend to be overwhelmed by news and events and sometimes miss the important things in life. I'm so sorry for that, and I've modified my monthly Patreon payment to rectify that shortfall. Oh my God, Paul, that is amazing and so thoughtful, which is why I'm telling you that if your credit card expired, then it means, and you think you're paying for a thing, in this case the podcast, which is what I do each and every day, then you might not be. Anyway, Paul goes on to write, I just love this, and I think longtime listeners will love it as well. He writes, Pete, I am the redcoat. Brother Brian is funny, who many years ago arrogantly corrected Dr. Aaron Carroll regarding his information on NHS and its funding. Clearly has educated me in his own self-effacing way so many times since. I'm forever appreciative of that. And I have to tell you, Pete, that the combination of invariably top-quality guests and the Stern-like ability to curate the information they have is amazing. The added bonus for us listeners is that your expertise in comedy easily brings out the personalities in these guests. Witness the encyclopedic Kenneth C. Davises and the moments of fun learning about as dry a subject as the Constitution of the United States of America. Pete, you've brought us so many experts in the fields who have become, over the years, our friends, that the list is almost endless. Your recent talk with Professor Eric Siegel, for instance, who miraculously rises above the, quote, doom and gloom with you, share a clearly close and valuable friendship with us all. I could listen to you two wrangle with the Constitution, SCOTUS, or just tell stories of your lives all day. Pete, there's so many sparkling guests over the years, but somehow you have made them our friends. You have a unique talent, and we're so blessed that you are able to transition from the heights of Rockefeller Center to the, shall we say, humble but comfortable Rockland County shed to get even better at what you obviously love to do. You've quoted many times, job is not a job if you love to do it. And I'm still enjoying my work here in Los Angeles in my 53rd year of dental technology. Listening to your show on my headphones when I'm on my bike, on the train, to and from work, at my workbench, you've educated and entertained me. And $1 a day for the best podcast available is a bargain. Pete, please keep up the valuable work. Take breaks as when you need them, and don't worry about the dropped news segment. I didn't even realize that. Although your presentation was consistently as good as any on the BBC radio roundups as I used to take in, it was an onerous task and may be harmful for both of us. we needed to back off the news a little to save our sanity. Please let me know if my upgraded payment to rectify previous theft doesn't go through in the next couple of days. I will check myself, of course. And then Paul added at the end that he's coming up on 14 years of sobriety, and that for this amazing atheist AA member, I still have to check myself from judging arrogant behaviors. Even at 68, Paul says, I have to remain teachable. Keep enabling my education, Pete. That, along with the laughter and tears, are priceless. Yours sincerely, Paul. Oh, my God, Paul. That email absolutely moved me, inspired me, checked me, and helped me define what I think I'm trying to do each and every day, which is learn along with you about the world, about our lives, and to, as you say, remain teachable. So well said, my friend, and you are my friend, and so many others have become as well. Thank you, thank you, thank you. I look forward to meeting you at some point and getting some dentistry made for me at your workbench. I want to know more, Paul. Also, speaking of listeners, amazing listeners, I got to meet Mindy Cunningham and her daughter, Amy, in New York over the weekend. I was in the city doing the audience warm-up at the greatest show on television last week tonight on HBO with John Oliver. And before then, I got to meet Mindy because she was in town taking in a show with her daughter on a rescheduled and then rescheduled trip. Many of us can relate to that because of COVID. And they were in New York. Her daughter is 28, and she's wonderful and lovely and so brilliant and successful as an interior designer. And Mindy Cunningham and her husband own several restaurants in Indiana and Kentucky and Ohio. If you're in any of those states, you should go to their restaurants. They're apparently, according to Aaron and Amy Carroll, who know them from Indiana, some of the best restaurants, or actually, Amy told me, the best restaurants around. So check them out. The Cunningham Restaurant Group is their organization, and Mindy is a longtime listener and very thoughtful, generous woman and subscriber. And it was great to meet Mindy and her daughter, Amy. And I love meeting you guys and hearing from you and connecting you with each other. It is such a great thing that we are doing together. I can't do it without you. So enough. Now I've got other things that I want to share with you and talk to you about before I get to both of my guests, Dr. Jason Johnson and then Maura Quint, both of which you're going to love. But first and foremost, two major losses yesterday alone in the world of, I think, entertainment, sports, and civil rights, if you will. Bill Russell, the NBA's first black coach and activist and champion over and over, he passed away over the weekend, and so did groundbreaking African-American actress Nichelle Nichols, whose role as Lieutenant Uhura in the original Star Trek series and multiple films was a lot of firsts in television and entertainment and led her to a real-life role in helping NASA recruit astronauts. She passed away. Bill Russell, Nichelle Nichols, both gone at 88 and 89. By the way, she was widely known for participating in one of the first interracial kisses on U.S. television when her character kissed Captain James T. Kirk, portrayed by white Canadian actor William Shatner. And in an interview in 2014, she said the kiss scene changed television forever, and it also changed the way people looked at one another. And there's so much more to say about it. But I did find this one clip that I wanted to share with you, which I thought was poignant, really worth sharing here on the podcast. Nichelle Nichols, in her own words, along with Star Trek creator Gene Roddenberry, who you'll hear here, and starting with a scene with her and Captain Kirk. Shatner.
Uhura, you're the only one who can do it.
I was pleased that in those days, when you couldn't get even blacks on television, that I not only had a black, but a black woman and a black officer.
You are away from your post, mister.
And that'll show them.
I told Gene after the end of the first season that I would not be returning to the show.
We terrified and overwrought.
That I wanted to return to my first love, which is musical theater. But I didn't know that meeting a Star Trek fan would change my life. I was told that fan wanted to meet me, and I turned and looked into the face of Dr. Martin Luther King. I was breathless. He says, yes, I'm the Trekker. I'm a Star Trek fan. And he told me that Star Trek was one of the only shows that his wife, Coretta, and he would allow their little children to stay up and watch. and thanked him. And I told him that I was leaving the show. All the smile came off his face, and he said, "You can't do that." He said, "Don't you understand that for the first time, we are seen as we should be seen? You don't have a black role. You have an equal role." And when I went back to work on Monday morning, I went to Gene's office and I told him what had happened over the weekend. And he says, "Welcome home. We got a lot of work to do."
All right. Wasn't that wonderful? Wasn't that worth hearing? And starting off your Monday. And I want to play nice things and share nice things as well whenever possible here, especially at the opening of the show, the opening of the week, and the month. Hey. And also, of course, NBA legend Bill Russell passed away at the age of 89. And here is ABC News' Lindsay Davis talking about the tributes pouring into the towering sports icon.
Credited with transforming the game of basketball, but tonight he is being remembered as an athlete and activist, not just the player, but the person. Standing 6 feet 10 inches tall, it was his quickness, rebounding, and blocking ability that made Bill Russell a great on the court.
What a play by Bill Russell!
But in society, his overall stature was further propelled by the stances he took, helping to reimagine the role of the athlete. Today, the 88-year-old legend is being remembered as a giant, not only transforming the face of the game, but for putting skin in the game when it came to the fight for racial equality.
I think I had a lot to do with the respect that athletes are treated with, black and white.
His family posting the news that the most prolific winner in American sports history passed away peacefully today at age 88 with his wife Janine by his side. Russell was the cornerstone of the Celtics, the beating heart of a great dynasty that dominated the NBA. In his 13 seasons in Boston from 1956 to 1969, they won 11 championships.
There isn't anyone here that has had as much fun as I've had in my life.
If anyone could appreciate Russell's unique brand of genius, it was his great rival, Wilt Chamberlain.
Boston Celtics were the best and greatest sports franchise of all times. Bill was the hub of that greatness.
In 1975, he was revered as the single most devastating force in the history of the game. In a poll in 1980, he was voted the greatest player in NBA history.
Basketball is what I did, it's not what I am. Whatever I do, I like to think that I bring an intelligent approach to it. I work hard at it, and I have a feeling of integrity about my profession.
William F. Russell.
More than 4 decades after he won a gold medal at the Olympics, he was awarded the Presidential Medal of Freedom by President Barack Obama as someone who stood up for the rights and dignity of all men. The former president issuing this statement today. As tall as Bill Russell stood, his legacy rises far higher, both as a player and as a person. Russell once said, "If you can take something to levels that very few other people can reach, then what you're doing becomes art." Today, many are marveling at his art that didn't imitate life, but dared to reimagine it. Russell once said that he tried to live a good life and tried to contribute to society. That he did.
All right, Lindsay Davis, credit to ABC News for putting that 3 minutes together, almost 3 minutes, and hopefully you appreciated that, hearing it as much as I did. And I'm just big losses for America, for the African-American community, for fans of Star Trek and sports and civil rights. Nichelle Nichols and Bill Russell, both gone, but what lives they lived and inspired so many. So I'm going to be thinking and reading and listening to more about both of them, I think, in the coming days. I'm sure you will as well. And now I want to get to 2 pieces of audio I wanted to share with you because I thought this was interesting and important. This is economist, Nobel-winning economist, New York Times columnist Paul Krugman on CNN's Reliable Sources, which in theory is a good show because it's a show looking at media throughout the week and supposed to be critiquing media, but there's plenty to critique about that show itself. Anyway, I thought this was good and I thought this is important. Here's Brian Stelter with Paul Krugman talking about the media's role in ramping up a recession, or fears of one at least.
It's the economy, stupid, so how should we cover it wisely? We've all seen the headlines. They're impossible to miss. The economy is slowing, declining, shrinking, and the phrase of the week is recession fears. It's what you see in every banner, recession fears. Economists seem to be struggling to explain this weird economy, maybe the weirdest economy we ever lived through. People want to know, is this a recession or not? The White House is arguing about the definition of the term. The media is basically caught up in that debate as well. There's a lot of confusion about it. So let me bring in a guest that I've wanted to interview for a long time, Paul Krugman. He is, of course, the Nobel laureate and economist, a distinguished professor at the City University of New York's Graduate Center, and a longtime columnist for the New York Times. Welcome to the program. Thank you for coming on.
Hi, thanks for having me.
Can we dispense with the recession debate real quick? Are we in a recession, and does the term matter?
No, we aren't, and no, it doesn't. I mean,
one sentence. That was it, huh?
Yeah, that was it. It's none of the usual criteria that real experts use says that we're in a recession right now. And what does matter? The state of the economy is what it is. Jobs are abundant, although maybe the job market is weakening. Inflation is high, though maybe inflation is coming down. What does it matter whether you use the R word or not?
Well, what do you think of that? Paul Krugman on CNN Reliable Sources. And here's one more clip, a little follow-up, another minute and a half or so.
And these data points. So what do you want the press to be doing differently in its day-by-day coverage of the economy?
Well, I think that the big problem has been that the coverage has tended, kind of it bleeds, it leads, but this time in economic data, the negatives get all of the attention. And there's a lot of polling that indicates that people, it's one thing for people to say, look, the inflation matters to me more than the job gains. But a plurality of voters appear to not be aware that we've been gaining jobs. People just don't know. People say they've heard more news items reporting negative news on employment than positive. And employment is, of course, the economy's good point. So I think that what's happening now is that there's been a kind of a negativity bias in coverage. The press should be giving people have their own personal experience. And if you ask people, how are you doing? They're pretty upbeat. There are signs that, people are complaining now, especially about things like gas prices, although those have come down in the last 6 weeks. But if you ask people, how's your financial situation, it's pretty favorable. If you ask them, how's the economy, they say, oh, it's terrible. And that's a media failing. Somehow we're failing to convey the realities of what's going on to people.
And there's the classic Brian Stelter, Okay, well, there you go. I thought you would appreciate those two clips as well as the clips on Nichols and Bill Russell. But now it's time to get to my first guest. Coming up, a great conversation with Maura, Quint. But first, I've got Dr. Jason Johnson, who you know now from MSNBC, where he is not only a contributor on panel, but he often anchors shows like Joy Reid's show and Deadline White House. He has become a close personal friend of mine. He is, of course, a professor of journalism and communications at Morgan State University. He is the host of a podcast on Slate's network called A Word. And, of course, he has a PhD in political science. So Dr. Jason Johnson, Dr. Jason Johnson on Twitter. We caught up at the end of last week before the passing of Bill Russell and Nichols, who, of course, I would have asked them both about. And it was great as always. Here we go right now. Dr. Jason Johnson.
Aha! I'm back.
Thank you.
We're back. We're bad. He's black. I'm mad. That terrible, horrible line from that god-awful Lethal Weapon movie. I don't know why those movies were so popular. Most of them were pretty shitty.
Oh, I liked them.
See? There you go. That shows your taste, Pete.
I fell for almost everybody white and black thing. I liked that, no matter what it was on, a TV show. I liked when black people and white people were doing things together when I was little.
I didn't, just as a fundamental rule. I just fundamentally hated people getting along with each other. That just, as a professional race hustler, I can't see that kind of camaraderie, man. It ruins my business.
Did it make you feel joy for real?
No, actually, no, like most of those movies, like, look, I remember Lethal Weapon. I mean, they were action films, so we had a lot of them, but the whole sort of black guy, white guy action film thing never quite worked for me because it always sort of never felt like the black person was actually written with any real agency, right? You go back to 48 Hours and it's like, I forget the guy's name who was playing with Eddie Murphy. But I mean, he was terrible, he was racist, and he was awful. Like, he treated Eddie Murphy like crap.
Nick Nolte?
Yeah, Nick Nolte. Yeah, he treated Eddie Murphy like crap throughout the whole damn movie. Like, that wasn't even really a buddy comedy, even though it was depicted that way. Beverly Hills Cop was more sort of an individual thing. And by the time you sort of took the Tango and Cash white buddy cop thing and said, oh, we're going to make it with Lethal Weapon. I mean, the second movie was entertaining because it was loud and it was explosive and everything else like that. And the idea of inverting the genre, right? Because Lethal Weapon was like, what if the crazy, wacky, semi-comedy relief person wasn't the black guy? We'll make it Mel Gibson. And we'll make, Danny Glover sort of play Bill Cosby, the cop, right? I mean, it's great one-liners. I'm too old for this shit as a classic. Ironically, it's so crazy we're talking about this. This just popped up in my Google photo memories. It was 4 years ago today. I think it was 4 years ago today that I went to the movie Sorry to Bother You with Lakeith Stanfield and directed by Boots Riley and also starring Danny Glover. And I got to meet Danny Glover. And I got to have him on stage say to me, I was moderating a panel, I got him to say, I'm too old for this shit, which really was like one of the high points of my life. To get Danny Glover.
Can I find that?
I'm too old for this shit to me directly.
If I can find that, if that's available on YouTube, I'll try to throw it in here at some point. But that, by the way, that movie, Sorry to Bother You, was one of the most trippy original things. I interviewed Boots Riley for that, and so, or I never would have watched it. Probably it never would have come into my, but I knew him and I admired him. I was like, he's available when I was at SIRIUS. And that movie was crazy. It was good. I really enjoyed it. Very original.
It's a really, if anybody's never seen it, it's a wild, strange movie. And Tessa Thompson's great. And Lakeith Stanfield is great. And Michael Johnson. Like, it's a lot of really good performances and a really, really weird movie. And it has probably one of my favorite cinematic moments of the last 20 years, which is like Lakeith Stanfield and the other actor whose name I don't remember. He played the son in Coming to America too. But they have the angriest, most tense, polite conversation ever. And you can sometimes see it on YouTube. This exchange, he's like, how are you doing today? I'm fine. I hope you're doing well. I hope you have a month of beautiful Sundays. They're just like angrily yelling at each other with compliments. You have to see it. It's masterful acting.
Are you doing all right?
Yeah, I'm doing good. How you doing?
Fantastic.
Fantastic.
I hope you have a good day.
Hope you have a better week.
I hope your month is full of successful days and a lot of great ventures. I hope you just come up, brother.
I hope your whole fucking year is spectacular.
Oh, you hope my year is spectacular?
Yeah.
You got something you want to say to me?
You got something you want to say?
You smell great.
You smell great. What is that?
Burberry. What you got on?
I forgot.
Smells expensive.
It's just deodorant.
Okay.
Yeah.
Good.
We smelling good. Some smelling good brothers out here.
You an awesome man, and I appreciate you.
Hope you find yourself.
Yeah,
too.
we should go out. Get drinks.
Wanna get drinks?
Yeah.
How many drinks?
2, 3,
4, 5, 6,
7,
8,
9,
10.
All of them.
On me?
It's on me. No, it's on me now.
You?
Yeah, it's on me now.
On you.
Watch it this. If people are looking for something, there's disturbing things in it, but they're not disturbing for the reasons you would think. It's fantastic. All right. Well, speaking of which, I just talked to our friend April Rain about Comic-Con, and you were the other person in my world who was talking so much about it, but actually went. So what I actually want to ask you, though, I thought it might be interesting, just a Jason Johnson kind of personal, professional question. Talk to me about your last week or so, because I've seen you on MSNBC at Comic-Con. You're publishing new episodes of A Word on Slate. Like, what have you been up to, for Christ's sake?
When it comes to the new Black Panther movie, but I swear by all that's holy, people have to understand that, like, you can love a new movie. I'm going to go see the new Black Panther film regardless, even though I thought that they should have recast T'Challa, even after Chadwick Boseman's passing. And I think people really need to, like, depersonalize themselves from this. Sometimes you don't get what you want as a consumer. I'm still going to go see a movie, even if the lead actor hasn't been replaced. I don't always get what I want. I can still enjoy it.
Well, that conversation, to me, I've decided, although people are clamoring for my opinion, I've decided not to weigh in. But I will say I think it's been interesting and healthy. I hope it doesn't get like ugly and nasty and people burning each other down. But as a spectator, I've enjoyed people's perspectives. And I think, different things can be right at once.
Well, I'll say this because this leads into Comic-Con. And again, I'm being facetious here. It's like, I did a thread yesterday. I understand why both sides feel the way they do. I understand people who are like, hey, look, this is a character that I loved. I don't want to see anybody else play in this role. The cast was grieving. Replacing him would be terrible. That makes perfect sense to me, right? And I also understand people saying, hey, look, when people pass or they move on or they quit roles, people get replaced all the time. You choose new actors, recasting. It's not a personal decision. And in fact, showing a world of people that universal characters can die is not really a good thing. We don't see that with anybody else. We have the sort of classic, I've had like 6 people play Superman in my life, 5 people play Batman. Like, these things can be done. If heaven forbid, and no one would ever want this to happen, but if Tom Holland passed away tomorrow, I promise you, Disney would not say, we love Tom Holland so much, we're never going to have somebody else play that role. We're just going to move to Miles Morales. That would not happen. They wait, and then they would find somebody else to do it. That's just how these things work. I understand both sides. I think my sort of thing is there's no moral correctness in this, right? Like, you're not morally right if you think that he should not be replaced. You're not morally fair. Right. It's like, it's not that fair. Personal, people. Like, it's not. You can love them both, right? So I say that as somebody who, I go to Comic-Con last week, and it was amazing. Pete, I'd never been to Comic-Con. I'd never gone. I went once to a party back in 2019, the Blurred and Bougie party. Shout out to the Blurred Brunch, Derek and Lamont and Dan who put that together. But, that's the only thing I had been to. So it was 4 incredible days of just, believe it or not, it wasn't just fun. I learned a lot. I learned a lot about the industry. I learned a lot about how comics are put together. My podcast, either this Friday or next Friday, I talked to Phil Boutte, who is a concept designer. And this guy has worked on everything from Star Trek to Black Panther and Wakanda Forever. And it was just interesting hearing like Black artists talk about, hey, this is what we bring to the table. This is how things work. I mean, I had just a ton of fun. There was partying. I got to meet great people. I saw the Black Power Ranger. I saw Tyrese from The Walking Dead. I got to hang out with Aldous Hodge. I mean, I had just a fantastic time.
So just to that question, list off your last week. What have you been up to?
So the last week, I sat in for Joy Reid. So I sat in for Joy Reid, I guess, Monday and Tuesday of this week. I had a fantastic time. I had my first conversation with Dr. Fauci. I had never actually had a chance to chat with him before in an interview. That was interesting. It was interesting.
Cool.
One of the things that happens when you facial expression hilarious. One of the things that happens, I don't know if you guys all know this, but when you're doing TV, you don't always control your time. And so I didn't get to ask him all the questions I wanted to ask him, but I did like this idea, President Joe Biden has contracted COVID. And he makes this whole point of saying I took Paxlovid and I'm working through it. It's like, dude, no, you shouldn't be working through it. You're 78 years old. What we should be telling people across America, especially as we're dealing with this new COVID wave, is no, you should not be working through COVID. That extends the symptoms. It doesn't matter if you think you're okay. You should take 10 days off. We should have national policy. We should have pushed for national policies. If you contract COVID, you get 10 days paid leave in addition to whatever your sick leave is. This idea that we've pushed in America for you to look, and I understand he's got political considerations. He's 78 years old. Some of his critics think he's frail, and you've got half a dozen Democrats chomping at the bit to challenge this man in 2024, which is a whole other issue. But I didn't like that idea, and I asked Fauci about it. And he kind of gave me an answer. He was like, yeah, I did the same thing. I worked from my laptop. I'm like, yeah, dude, because you can work from your laptop. But what does this say to the 63-year-old office worker? What does this say to the 45-year-old who works at Verizon who's like, well, I guess I got to power through. It's just a cough, right?
Right.
But then 3 months later, you still have that cough because you were pushing your body when you should have been resting and healing.
Really? You didn't get to bring that up? I want to go see that.
I got to bring up the first part of it.
Yeah.
I did not get to bring up the follow-up after he talked about his experience. And again, I'm not casting aspersions on anybody. I mean, Fauci was talking about his particular experience. But I think when we have these conversations about, because we also started talking about monkeypox, I think we have these conversations about, mild COVID versus not. It ain't mild to lose your sense of taste or smell for 3 months. And I know people where that happened. That's not mild.
Yeah, no, that happened to my wife, and it was impacted her in a way I never imagined, because certain people, obviously, I mean, listen, if you're in a culinary world, if you're in any number of different industries that you lose your sense. I don't think I need to explain it. Is very impactful, and so much more about that. So so wait, keep going. So Joy Reid, you sat in there, you did Comic-Con first, you did Joy Reid. I mean, anything else?
So I was on Joy Reid. I did Comic-Con, and then last week, it's funny, man, the way you mentioned it, I was like, I don't realize like how insanely busy my weeks are. I think before then I was traveling. I had just given a talk at UCLA. Oh, I also gave a talk to this organization in Philly about sort of gun violence. It was the anniversary of Barack Obama's beer summit.
Oh.
So I gave a talk there. And I don't know if you guys remember this. I mean, I'm sure Pete does, but like, it was like 13 years ago, whatever it is, that Obama had this beer summit after Skip Gates got arrested for trying to go back into his own house and had, a white neighbor call the police on him. Again, how the bleep do you not know it's Skip Gates? You've lived next to this dude for years, but he had the police called on him. And so, what Obama did at the time is he invited Skip Gates and the cop to come to his house and come to the White House and have a conversation over beer, because as we all joked at the time, you know what? So many racial problems have been solved over alcohol. It seems like it often works the other way. White guy, black guy drinking. What could happen?
I think that was, in their defense, I think that was more of a manly thing. Let's have a beer together.
I mean, I've seen more violence. I don't drink, but it wasn't a good idea at the time. But that's back when President Obama thought to himself, well, maybe I can bring people together. So I did that talk. I did a little bit of traveling. I went to the 4 days of Comic-Con, which were absolutely spectacular. By the way, downtown San Diego is beautiful. There weren't nearly as many people at Comic-Con, I've been told, as in years past. I will say this, and I avoid a lot of crowds because COVID is still real, and I mask everywhere, and I don't spend extended periods of time. I still think people should be doing classes virtually and based on their safety. I don't think people should be back in the office on a regular basis. And I avoided in crowds when I was at Comic-Con. Like I didn't stand on the floor. If I was in the room, I was back in the room, and I didn't stay long, right? I tended to just pop in and out of things. But I will tell you, by comparison, it was amazing how responsible people were about masking, and the number of cases of COVID since Comic-Con have been relatively low, I think, because so many mask mandates were required of the people who were there. There's not a mask mandate in the city of San Diego, but they made one in that darn convention center. I think that made a difference.
I feel similar about being around crowds as a result. It's interesting how we change, and just being cognizant when you are around a crowd of exactly where you're standing and who you're talking to. It's nerve-wracking. Hey, before I let you go, I wanted to ask you, permission on the record. Am I overthinking my tattoo idea? So the idea for everybody else is, I read this thing in Ryan Halliday's Ego is the Enemy about restraint. And I have an issue with that, a big issue, to the point where I'm, really working on just not reacting to all kinds of things, especially with people I care about. And he illustrates how Jackie Robinson, the owner of the Dodgers, was like, listen, the only way I can sign you is if you don't react to this constant hatred that you're inevitably going to get. And he did, right, to his credit, an amazing job. And I've been looking for something to put on my body, on my arm, that would be symbolic of that. And to me, it's like, if he could restrain himself in the face of that kind of daily hatred and violence and spitting, then I can be just fine when I'm, having an issue with someone at a retail outlet, much less my wife or my daughters. What do you think of me putting just those numbers? Am I missing something? Is there a racial? Am I doing something inappropriate?
So, on Monday, Mark Thompson live streamed it. Roland Martin live streamed it. I talked about it in the last segment on the readout. On Monday, they opened the Jackie Robinson Museum in New York, and his wife was there, who just turned like 100 years old, right? And they talked about all the great things that Jackie Robinson did. My first reaction to this is I think of an old therapist that I had 1,000 years ago when I was in graduate school. And he talked about, we had this conversation about anger. And he said, anger on your behalf you can work on, but anger on behalf of other people is oftentimes where we see justice, where we see protection. And when you talk about this, my first thought, honestly, Pete, is I just read a great article on the Grio by Panama Jackson, an old colleague of mine, great guy, really smart. And he was talking about the viral thing last week was Sesame Place. Right?
Yeah.
And these videos of what appears to be Rosita. And I don't know how many different people play Rosita, because it seems to be Rosita every time, like ignoring black kids. Like, I don't know if this is just some black on brown violence. I don't know, because it wasn't like Big Bird was doing it. It just seemed Rosita every time. And it's a great article because what he talked about is the anger of being a parent, and in particular, a black parent, and how he said he and his wife, who put together an organization for black moms in DC, how they would get on their group chats and say, how do you handle this, right? Like, do you get angry? Do you, like Kelly Rowland said from Destiny's Child, do you burn the whole damn thing down? Or is your first job to inoculate your children, your 4-year-old and your 6-year-old, because you don't need them to understand that kind of racism and that safe place that early on, right? Like, there's a bunch of different things you have to think about. So that comes to mind when you're talking about Jackie Robinson dealing with this abuse because of 42. Because if people are being abusive to you, then yes, letting it slide or not letting it bother you, I think, is a noble aim, right? But if people are causing harm to others, if people are causing harm to loved ones, then you have every right to get angry. And you have every right to react with rage and anger in defense of other people who are being mistreated. And I always think that's an important thing when we talk about, pacifism and kindness and being in sort of peaceful Zen places. Even Jesus talked about, like, I get pissed off on other people's behalf. So now, whether or not you should get the tattoo, no, of course not. I think tattoos are silly. I mean, I'm a not big tattoo guy. I mean, obviously, I've been involved with lots of people who've had tattoos. I think they look great on some people. If you're going to get a tattoo, I think it matters where you put it. But I think the bigger idea of understanding that what Jackie Robinson was doing is the racism towards him and the abuse towards him. No, he didn't react on the field, on the baseball diamond, because it hurt him. But he took all that rage and all that anger and he used it to fight for black people and civil rights in general. So we have to remember that taking that abuse doesn't mean you don't have anger. It just means you direct the anger at different places.
I love that. All of that. And I have never gotten a tattoo, and I've never been a tattoo person. Mm-hmm. But I started flirting with the idea about, I don't know, a little while ago. And as a way to remind me, I've always had like things that I've worn, or sometimes I even write something to myself to remind me to do a thing, anything from not forget something to not react to something, just a behavioral thing. So for me, I feel like it has to be super symbolic. So that's where I'm at with that.
I mean, if you get like a big 42, like across your stomach, like Thug Life, if you got some really good abs, I think that'd be great. And then do like a little Tupac photo shoot where you're like in a bathtub with a lot of, bubbles and shit. I think that'd be great. Pete, you're never too old to thirst trap. So I respect that.
That's for sure. I was actually going to get it right on my face.
Like a little teardrop that says 42?
Just a giant 42 on my forehead.
I think that would work. I don't know that you would be comfortable with it years later when like some terrible baseball player like John Rocker takes 42 or something. I don't know. Speaking of which,
John Rocker.
That's an old school reference. Yeah. John Rocker, for those of you who don't know, it's a very
Google
like 12,
him. His Wikipedia
ago.
Must be fun. Go ahead.
Exactly. But I do actually wonder this. I didn't know this. Did they retire Jackie Robinson's number for everybody in baseball? Like, I don't think anyone can wear 42 anymore, right?
That's right.
Okay.
Yep.
It shows how much I pay attention to baseball, which I do not, because I tend to find it excruciatingly dull and boring. Oh, which also, other things, I wanted to remind people of this. So a couple things. One, because you had asked me about this before. So in the coming weeks, I will be guest hosting for like an entire week. I'll be sitting in for Joy for like an entire week. I may be doing Deadline White House tomorrow. I'm going to be, like I said, hopefully within the next couple of months, I'll be able to make an announcement about my graphic novel, which I'm very excited about. Podcast this week and next. I have Ebony Hilton, who's just fantastic and smart and super cool.
I follow her on Twitter.
Yeah. So I interviewed her for my podcast that drops this Friday. So we're talking about monkeypox and COVID. And hey, look, Ebony is a doctor who has not caught COVID in 2.5 years. And I think anybody who works in a hospital where you're around sick people all the time who's managed to avoid COVID. And also, and I think this is also a big thing. I never ask people if they have or have not caught COVID. I think personal medical things are personal medical things. I think it's important that we don't shame people, don't make people feel weird about it one way or another. But I do think people who are comfortable talking about it because they're medical professionals, if you have somebody like her who's like, hey, I've gone 2.5 years, I've been in all these different locations, I've been in hospitals full of sick people, and I've managed to not contract this virus despite being in high sort of, I don't know, threat matrix. I don't know what the technical term is. She's worth listening to. She's very, very smart and very cool. So I encourage people to take a peek at that. And then, like I said, I will ask you this quick, Pete. What did you think? We didn't get into the debate. Obviously, I kind of said what my opinion is, but just as a consumer and a fan, and as a white man, because I always ask you every question as a white man. I have to ask you as a white man. That's the most important thing. What did you think of the Wakanda Forever trailer?
Well, bringing my white experience, bringing my whiteness to this question and this issue, I am terrible at talking about this subject matter, film, television, even culture to some extent. I just don't have a lot. I don't think that much about it. I think that earlier when you mentioned if Tom Holland, God forbid, died, we wouldn't be talking about him. Well, he's the 9th Spider-Man, and it's that the whiteness is not, race is not important to that character. So I just think that's a flawed, example. This is such a specific character, and people have my understanding is what I've seen is that this movie, this franchise, and the comic book before it affected people like you and black folks in general in such a profound way that there's a sense of ownership over the story. And so I kind of look at it and say, on that debate, whatever you want that makes you happy, I understand. In the end, I feel like the creators get to decide what happens, the fate of a character. In this case, I think the director, Coogler, I think it's probably a lot of to say, the writers, obviously the studio. But I just think it's great. I don't have any opinion on where this film goes. I think it's a great franchise for all the reasons I just stated. And I hope that it doesn't divide the black community, much less anybody else, because I think overwhelmingly it should be hopefully inspiring and empowering. That's what I think, especially to women, it seems.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I say just objectively, like, I thought the trailer was cool. So, I mean, that's what I tell people. Like, I thought the trailer was cool. It looks entertaining, controlling for the sort of larger political discussions and narrative. I was like, if I just saw this trailer, I would say this is a movie that I want to see. And at the end of the day, I think most of the people who are out there talking one way or another, you're all going to go see it. So I don't know why anybody complains.
There's the other thing, in a trailer or in a film, I mean, the bottom line is there are certain actors who are so iconic in your life, they mean something to you. And for me, I mean, like for everybody, Angela Bassett, who is ageless. And so like she brings every character that new character she does, she brings all the rest of you think of her, I think, in so many other roles. And it's just like that sends you a little bit of a thrill. And there's other characters that make me feel that way, too. I'm not going to lie to you. Brad Pitt makes me feel that way.
Yeah, Brad Pitt doesn't do that for me. But I'm going to go see Bullet Train, right? Like,
and what I mean is I'm aroused by both of them. But anyway, what we're going to say, yes. Yeah.
I was just that was the thing. I was just saying I think also part of it is like, at the end of the day, there's a movie coming out. And like, does the movie look good or does it look bad? And I find a lot of the people who complain about it, it shoots me, and I'm going to close with this other movie real quick. It always sort of entertains me because it's just like people who were screaming about the NFL, on either side. The people who are like, oh my God, I'll never watch the NFL again because of all these woke black players, translation, N-word players who are taking a knee. Whatever. The last 3 years, the NFL's had it's had a rating increase every single year. Clearly, a lot of those people who are complaining online and on television continue to watch.
Yeah.
And a lot of other people who are like, I will never watch again because of what they did to Kaepernick. Again, I don't think those ratings are coming from nowhere. Now, I know some people who have decided they just don't have any interest in watching the NFL anymore. I get it, right? Like, I totally understand that. But the vast majority of the people who are jumping up and down and complaining, they're going to end up watching anyway. And that's why, like, I'm just like you, Pete, on this regard. Like, I may have a strong feeling about what I think they should do and why, whatever it is, but I'm going to go watch the darn movie. And I don't think that anybody who are having these discussions online, I don't think those people are wrong or terrible. I will say this, though, about wrong and terribleness. I did see Nope, Jordan Peele's latest movie. Have you seen that yet?
I haven't seen any of his movies.
You haven't seen Get Out?
I don't like black films.
I know I don't like black people, Jason. How did you
or people? I'm more of a black. I like black persons. No, I don't. I said to April, I don't like that. So it's so embarrassing when you admit it that you haven't seen this Get Out. But I said to her, like, I don't see any scary movies. But then she convinced me because I watched the show The Boys. She's like, if you watch that, there's not like, what is wrong with you? I'm like, I just never watched scary movies, and I was just scared, literally. But she shamed me so hard. There's nothing really, or she didn't shame me that hard, but she just basically made the case. So I'll go. What do you want to say about Nope?
I would definitely see Get Out because I don't think Jordan Peele really makes horror movies. I think they're suspense films.
Yeah, okay.
They're suspense thrillers. They're not. There's not a lot of blood. There's not a lot of gore. I would definitely see it. I'll also say this. I thought this was the best season of The Boys until the finale. I really didn't like the finale at all. I thought it went back on everything that had been built throughout the season. And I always say, just like you watching as a white man, watching as a black person, you can tell the storylines. And I have a friend who's on the show. You can tell the storylines where you had non-white writers participating because you can tell the nuances and things like that get picked up. I felt that the entire storyline with MM and his daughter and her stepfather and his wife just didn't make any sense. That was not written like any mixed family ever. Like none of that story rang true to anybody. And I know probably what the casting directors were trying to do, but I promise you, no black mother with a black daughter who divorces her black husband and marries a white man, right, is going to be okay with that white man introducing her daughter to praising and worshiping white nationalist superheroes. Like that doesn't make any sense. And there was never really a conversation about that. And I will tell you, now I wasn't in this particular situation, but given that MM had a good relationship with his daughter, most kids that I know, if their real daddy got into a fight with their stepdaddy, they're taking their real daddy's side. I'm just saying.
I was worried we were going to get too inside baseball, but you did perfectly explain the scenario that plays out on that TV show. And I think you didn't have to watch that or ever have to watch that to realize the point you're making about why the Sotomayor said about a wise Latino, the experience you have in life, you're going to bring to, in this case, and the episode of The Boys, which is why certainly black writing or female writing or gay writing, whatever matters. Or at least having the voice in there matters. So, yeah, fascinating. All right, just quickly, your hot take on the Manchin Schumer deal.
I mean, it's fine. Like I said, I'm at a point now where very little that Congress does is moving me unless or until I see much more effort done to stop overall voter suppression and to stop the people trying to overthrow the country. The other deals that they cut, little voting deals here and there. They're important. They take care of people. But at the end of the day, you have a Supreme Court that is completely illegitimate, that has 3 members that should be gone, Kavanaugh, Gorsuch. You have an absolutely compromised Clarence Thomas, and that's what should be focused on. You have the president right now pushing through a bill that would, add 100,000 additional police officers. That's not what we need during COVID. There's so many more important things that I wish Congress was focused on, and I wish that the Senate was focused on. So, yeah, I mean, the bill it's nice, but, I'm way more concerned with the Supreme Court deciding this fall that independent legislatures can ignore the will of the people and pick their own electors. I'm much more concerned that the Democratic Party is spending money and donating to crazy right-wing Republicans because they think they'll be, quote unquote, easier to beat, ignoring that you've got voter suppression going on the ground. I'm more concerned that you have somebody not even like Dr. Oz, but like Herschel Walker, who's still getting 44% of the vote when the man is clearly intellectually incapable of doing the job. Those are things way more important to me than the Schumer deal.
All right, so I'll mark it down as a climate denier. Okay.
Yeah, basically.
Jason Johnson, what a wonderful conversation as always. Thank you so much for joining me. We love you.
Yeah, man, you got to hit me up because we got to chat about some off the record stuff. So hit me up later on this week.
Will do.
All right, later, man.
All right, there he goes, Dr. Jason Johnson. Go listen to his podcast, A Word, that's on Slate. Watch him on MSNBC. Follow him on Twitter at Dr. Jason Johnson. Always a great conversation, and that was no exception. And it was interesting to disagree with him on some of the things about the DCCC strategy, and Maura Quint also disagrees with me when I ask her about that, so I guess I'm just wrong, but I'd love to hear from you on it. All right, now that conversation with Maura coming up right now. She, of course, is a hilarious comedy writer and activist and the campaign chief at Americans for Tax Fairness. Has a lot to say about the new Manchin-Schumer bill and the taxes there, or not. Neither she or Jason, rather, really excited about it. I am still. They haven't changed me on it. Again, would love to know what you think. But Maura, always awesome. A great conversation. Awesome on Twitter at Behind Your Back. If you're not following her, you should be. Here we go. My latest with Maura Quint, kicking off the week. And we're kicking off August with Maura.
You just blew my mind. Is it August? Oh, my God. I don't know what to do with that. I don't like that. This is terrible. Don't do that.
What does it mean?
It means that it's another month in. You know what? Obviously, we don't get off for the summers anymore in life, but like there's still this feeling of like the end of summer. It feels like the Sunday of the year a little bit, you know? It's frightening. I don't know. That feels weighted. It feels like, oh, you got to get everything in now. You got to get it in now. This is your last chance. Do it all.
I was at a store the other day. I don't want to brag, but I went out.
Whoa.
Left the shed.
Hey, big spender. All right.
Left the shed. Got out there to a store. While I was at a store, killing time while I was waiting for Julia. No other reason. And I saw
that
it was
the
like
most teenage answer ever. I'm sorry. You were just
really?
killing time to the store, just bumming around. Just didn't have anything else to do. So you went to the mall, just kicking around.
Yeah.
Getting in some trouble.
It was one of those home stores, like a home deck, a home goods or a home something at home. Maybe it was at home, and they had the fall decorations out, and I just want to mention it and throw it out there as see if you get triggered.
Triggered about fall?
Yep.
I mean, fall is a good thing, so it's okay. Actually, honestly, I have been going out walking early in the mornings because I've been walking dogs like really, really early, and it has been miserable and humid and hot. And then the other day it was like crisp, just a little bit, just a teaspoon of crispness. Just like, oh, like remember what crisp is? Like it's coming. And it felt fantastic. It actually made me really happy. So you telling me that stores have fall stuff, I'm like, all right, I'm fine with that. That's great.
Okay. All right.
That was not a panic-inducing thing. I know you wanted me to panic. I'm sorry.
Not at all. It was the first thing you said was really funny. There's a long pause and you went, triggered by fall? No, not at all. I love the crisp. So, okay, fine.
It's
all
one
right,
of those words. You have to get every letter in crisp. Otherwise, you're doing it. You can't slur it.
We've covered it. We've covered the gamut of this time of year, and hopefully people are okay with it being August because that's what it is. Hopefully also people are okay. It was hard for me to not have won the 1 billion on Friday night. I was surprised that I didn't win. Did you
buy a ticket?
I bought 4 tickets.
Oh, see, I assumed you'd be the sort of person who'd be surprised you didn't win even not having bought a ticket. So I was just curious.
What kind of an unbelievable asshole do you think I am?
I just assumed they would knock on my door.
I can't imagine a joke, a more hilarious joke about an entitled person than that one. He's so entitled.
It was really shitty. Yeah. It was really shitty.
That he thought he won a thing that he wasn't competing in. He wasn't a competitor. I read something that said you're more likely to die having a vending machine fall upon you than to win the Mega Millions. What do you think of that?
I think that sounds fantastic. I mean, like either way, no matter what you're coming out with something. You're coming out with some sort of joy. Like, could be an almond joy, could be, otherworldly. It sounds great.
While you're at the gas station buying your lotto ticket
from vending machines these days. I don't know.
So are you morally offended by the concept of lottery because you're such an
an anti-wealth person.
What, because it's creating like more billionaires and more rich people? Is that where we're going with that one? That I'm offended by the just the construct of more entitled, privileged assholes in the world?
Well, just one more in this case from Wisconsin. The person got
Iowa,
a lot.
I thought. No, wasn't it?
Oh, was it
Illinois?
Iowa?
Actually, no. I think we're both right. I think it was like Illinois. I remember trying to think, how do I say Illinoisan? So I feel like it was Illinois.
Yeah, one of those states. Regardless, it was only apparently one ticket. So.
Mm-hmm. Right. Yeah. No, I am not offended. I think that's actually probably the more honest way one can become a billionaire, actually, than any of the previous billionaires that exist. Like they did more than most billionaires do to earn that money.
And they're probably going to have to actually pay taxes on that money. Is that
yeah.
Right?
Yeah, they're going to pay a lot.
Is there a loophole?
I mean, I'm sure there are some lawyers being paid a lot of money to figure it out.
Yeah.
They have to create a pass-through business, and then they're pretty much set. Yeah, and then they need to just basically buy a bunch of tradable assets and then not sell them. Yeah, there's a lot of loopholes. I know them, actually. Whoever you are, if you listen to this podcast and you want to exploit the loopholes, I'm trying to close those, but for this narrow time, I can get you in. It's going to cost you, though.
Someone in Chicago suburb is that's where it was. You were right, Illinois.
Oh my God! Think of all that pizza. They're gonna create the biggest, deepest dish pizza of all time.
I mean, I just can't even imagine what that person's life is like right now. Regardless, I do think it's interesting. Well, it takes us into the conversation. I definitely wanted to talk with you about this bill that is making its way through Congress that surprised pretty much everybody. That Joe Manchin and Chuck Schumer got together to actually, looks like, as if we're talking Sunday night, pass something. And within this, there are tax increases, is my understanding. How do you see and how are you looking at this as a person, an activist, and someone who has been working on these issues for now two organizations, one of which you co-founded now with Americans for Tax Fairness? Are you analyzing this bill and looking at the tax increase? Are you surprised? Is this how are you thinking about it?
Pete, you have kids. Do you remember when your kids were little and there would be like something, let's say, that they wanted or didn't want? Let's say they wanted a piece of candy and you're like, well, that's not good for you. And they asked you for the piece of candy and you said no. And then they asked you for the piece of candy and you said no. And this went on. And eventually you like scream at them, like you blow up and you're just like, no one's getting any candy. Candy's been wiped off the face of the planet. Candy's never happening. And you just like lose your shit, I'm abolishing sugar. Like that, happens. And then they go away for a little while and then they come back and then they ask you for candy again. And like, again, you like literally light fire to the house and you're just like, this is what I think of candy, motherfuckers. Like, it's like that point. And then they go away for a little bit while later and then they come back again and they ask for candy. And you're just like so dead on the couch. You're just like, yeah, here's all the candy. Just fucking, I don't care. Yeah, no, you can just have candy. That's how I feel with this bill. Like, whatever. Yeah, great. Okay, there's stuff in it. Good. All right. Okay, sure. I mean, like, yes, there are legitimate tax increases. They are good things. I am glad that they are happening. They're 1/100th of what we would like to see in a bill like this. And in this case, I mean, the corporate minimum tax, that's great. Corporations are getting away with absolutely ridiculous amounts of stuff. We would love to see a corporate minimum tax. That's a good way to go about things. Additional IRS enforcement funding, fantastic. Right now, the IRS cannot go after the wealthy tax cheats because the wealthy tax cheats sue and wrap them up in all sorts of paper, and they don't have any sort of money to go after these things, so they shut it down. And they end up auditing people who do not deserve it, people at the other ends of spectrums of wealth. And so, yes, these are great things. I'm glad they're in there. It's like, whatever. Yeah, I don't care. Great. Say yes. Just vote it through. Glad to have anything. Please let me go to bed. Like, let's move on. That's a terrible, terrible attitude. That's a terrible attitude. You're asking me on a Sunday. On a Monday when I've had to like spend more time staring at these for a while, I'd be more, I'd be a more official person.
Now, your perspective is valuable, and I'm not sure that it'll change that much from day to day because of the mood that you're in, which is what it sounds like. I think it sounds more like you've been working on these issues for years and years, and you have a real understanding of just how much money is being given away, is being stolen, and it depends on how you want to look at it. And given that perspective, the tax hikes in this Manchin-Schumer reconciliation bill, if you will, are not, to you, what is needed. And I think that for someone like yourself who's an activist and someone who works on these issues all the time, your reaction is really important to get.
What I would say is that I'm really happy to see them doing investments in any sort of green technology and climate change. I think is incredibly important. And they have paid, I mean, like the bottom line, if you are someone who is going out there and you are talking to other people or you're talking to voters, like the bottom line is they are investing in work to combat climate change, and it is entirely paid for, and it is paid for by fairer taxes. And all of that is incredibly true and needed and right and good. It is a good thing. It is fully a win. And I don't mean to dismiss that at all. I'm obviously just very tired, but it is fully a win. I think the other thing to note is that there are quite a lot of tax proposals that are being left on the table. And the good thing about that is we have a lot of ways to pay for other things. So this deals with some climate change. There's a lot of other stuff that did not get in that needs to be getting in. We need to be doing a lot more for children, for families, for child tax credits. All that type of stuff can come back in, and we still have a whole slew of ways to pay for it. One of which, you got me started, was just introduced in the House by Representatives Cohen and Beyer with, I want to say 32 co-sponsors signed on at that point, which is the billionaire's minimum income tax. So we have these like billionaires taxes that Democrats are still putting forth and pushing and are being introduced as legislation. And they're good. They're going to get us a lot further, and they can be used to pay for a lot of other priorities. So there's a lot of good things still happening. The zombie reconciliation, or whatever it's being called, right? Inflation Reduction Act, right? is a good thing. It's a much smaller piece of what we wanted to see happen, but that does not preclude the other stuff from going through.
Am I some kind of, what is it? What's the word? A Cassandra? Is that sexist? Pollyanna? Those are two very different things. So I'm really excited to see how this goes. Am I a Heather? Am I a Karen? Am I a Tiffany?
You are absolutely a Miranda. No, you're not actually. I'm a Miranda. You're Charlotte.
Yeah. If I were a famous woman,
yeah,
who would I be? No,
you'd have more hair. Yeah,
that is a deep cut and really free to go right to it. My question is about when I look at Congress and I look at the House of Representatives and I think specifically about Democrats, I feel like so often they have passed really important, progressive, whatever you want to call it, legislation, including recently codifying marriage equality. You just mentioned this bill that they haven't passed, but they have 30, Congress people on it that have signed up to support it. And as well as an assault weapons ban last week. These things don't get that much attention. They're not big headlines. People talk a lot about the United States Senate where legislation goes to die. But am I being too supportive or generous to House Democrats and the House of Representatives led by Nancy Pelosi for getting a lot done, even though we don't see it become law because of the makeup of the U.S. Senate and the filibuster required, et cetera?
Well, I think when you look at the House, you're looking at a body that is far more representative of the country because you're dealing with, representatives only have smaller districts. And so when you look at something that is more representative of the actual makeup of the country, you find that in general, it's far more progressive and there's a lot more that people want to have happen. And so, yeah, I think that the House of I don't even think the House of Representatives goes far enough in terms of the sort of bills that they could be bringing to the floor and could be passing that are wildly popular and could be supported. But I do think that they are doing a much better job than the Senate, which is just a wildly undemocratic and unrepresentative body that is just, I don't like the Senate. How about that?
Yeah, no, that's fine. We don't have to get too hung up on that. We'll set aside a full hour for you to rant and talk about it.
It'll just be abolish the Senate over and over, but like maybe to like a beat, we could get like a whole like sort of thing going. I think this could be the hit of the fall. I mean, is it too late to be the hit of the summer? I don't know. I could do something here.
Viral.
Abolish the Senate.
Well,
okay, sorry.
You must be. Could you please stop that? You must be.
you have a case of the Sunday nights. I think when you
it's been a long day for me, Pete. I'm sorry.
Do you feel that Joe Manchin has gone from zero to hero?
You asshole.
Thank you.
How dare you?
Thank you. How about this? You're in Pennsylvania. I wanted to ask you specifically about this method, this political campaigning method. Democrats are paying to make extreme Republicans more popular. They're almost campaigning for. They're buying campaign ads that highlight the extremities of some Republican candidates. And folks are really split over this, including it's happening in your state of Pennsylvania. And I'm not sure if I'm explaining it well enough, but everybody knows what I'm talking about. And Maura, for the life of me, I don't understand the criticism, and people I respect are criticizing this.
Really?
Yeah, I think.
Really?
Yes.
Pete, do you know what happened in 2016? Were you part of that cycle of things? Because that's what happened in 2016. We saw it go down at the highest level. And things have only gotten more concentrated in terms of what individuals are taking in, and more fanatical and more extreme since then. So yeah, I think it's a very risky undertaking.
Well,
I mean, you want to see some Trumps and then go like, oops, we thought he'd be easy to beat.
Well, I don't know that the Democrats were using this tactic like the DCCC is in supporting Trump with money the way that they are. Maybe
not financially, but it was still strategic.
Your point is taken. So you think it's a terrible idea. What do you think of the idea?
I mean, look, I think I think it was Ted Lieu even who was maybe asked this question, who had kind of an equivocating answer that I did not think was terrible, because ultimately, right, we don't know. And if there was a way to do politics and get it right, everyone would be doing it. And if the deal was you just have to elevate the worst person on the opposite side so that you can easily beat him, everyone would be going all in on that. But that's not, like, this is still a tremendous risk. There is no proven, there's no proof showing that is a winning strategy at all. And I think that we definitely, I mean, in 2016, I had moments of thinking like, well, yeah, sure. Yeah, great. Trump, right? Like, no one's going to vote for that guy.
Yeah.
I'm like,
Yeah,
I
I
had that go through my head.
I certainly did. Yeah.
Yeah, sure. Like, I think that was a pretty common thing. And I think that, the DC insiders had that feeling too. And so knowing that was the way that everyone felt, or not everyone, but that there was this strong sense of that being a common belief then. But we saw what happened. I don't know how you can dare to gamble this time around to go, no, but this time it's going to work. That seems really like a lot of hubris.
Okay.
To me.
Well, there you go. That's Maura's perspective. I did not think that that's where you were going to land on that. I hadn't heard you talk about it. I hadn't talked to you about it, and hadn't seen you tweeting about it. But it's a tactic that's being used in your state, in Pennsylvania, where they've nominated Republicans now. He won the primary. A real crazy guy, Doug Mastriano.
Yeah.
And I don't know if you have anything to say about him, or I was going to ask you about Fetterman, Dr. Oz. I'm loving the ads, whether it's Fetterman's team or the anti-Dr. Oz ads about, come back to New Jersey and everything else. But what do you think about those two candidates and this tactic being used by Democrats to support Mastriano?
Look, I understand that sort of sense that we can elevate, but you and I are very much online, which means we see a lot more than the average person sees. No one in my family is paying attention to these sort of online things. And I think that that's fine in this case for my immediate family. But for instance, during the pandemic, I didn't know my neighbors. But once the world sort of shut down, people were outside in their yards more. And and I started talking to my neighbors a little bit more. And I, met them and that was kind of nice. And the people across the way was this nice older couple. They had grandchildren around my children's age. And they wanted to bike around. And it was all very pleasant. And they helped me, a dog that I was watching escape from my house. And they helped me get this dog back. It became very community and cute and small town. And there were all these types of experiences. I baked cookies and left them on people's porches, that type of stuff. And then 6 months ago, there's a Mastriano sign in their yard. Like, I wasn't having deep conversations with these people per se, but in my mind, to support someone like Mastriano, you've got to be fucking crazy, right? Like, you've got to be really just gone. And here was this nice couple with the nice grandkid, like, just all in with Mastriano. And I think it's like, it's a bit much to assume that, like, no, but he's too crazy. People will get it. He's too crazy. I don't think that's the case at all.
Is it true that you baked them a new kind of cookie once they put that sign out? Dropped it off? Is that?
I'm not actually permitted to say. Thank you. Not while the investigation is ongoing.
Can you imagine if, like, somebody put some kind of political sign in the yard and you made them something and put laxative or something horrible in it? I
just made some berry cookies. I just don't know what the berries from my backyard do.
Poison backyard berry.
It's a roulette cookie is all it is.
Hey guys, made you some backyard berry cookies. Hope you like them.
So there is a tree in my backyard that produces some sort of berry, and I've never looked it up, but my nephew the other day, who is a wonderful, like, foodie type person. I mean, he's like 10 years old, but like he's like, Aunt Maura, what do these taste like? I have to try them. I was like, no, please don't. No, it might kill you. Your dad would be mad. Please stop.
It's amazing that there's poisonous berries out there. It says a lot about, I think it says a lot about Adam and Eve and the Lord. So what about Fetterman?
That must be it. Well, so this is the other thing too. Fetterman is much more higher profile. He's obviously running a really intense campaign, but again, I worry, frankly, because again, we're very online. So with the Mastriano stuff, you and I see how absolute batshit insane that guy is. With the Fetterman stuff, we're like, oh, look how cool this guy is. But again, I don't know actually if any of that is piercing through to people who are not just terminally online in that same way. And I hope it is. I mean, the polls are showing Fetterman well above, which is good and also makes sense. He has, again, a much higher profile in Pennsylvania. The Mastriano-Shapiro race, I mean, Shapiro has a higher profile, but Shapiro is not as... people don't, Attorney General is just like not something that people tend to necessarily know unless that person has gone out of their way to some way make a name for themselves. And, Shapiro is easy to kind of miss, basically, whereas Fetterman's hard to miss. Fetterman's hard to miss anywhere. You walk into a grocery store and you're like, there he is. Yeah, that's the guy.
All good points. I feel like, by the way, when you're an AG running for, in this case, governor, the only thing that you really make a name for yourself is bringing down crime. And when you're in that type of a role, and that often means more mass incarceration, punitive measures for people of color, it looks good for one constituency, one demographic, one political ideology. But sometimes it's hard to be a prosecutor, or most of the time, or an AG, and do things that get progressives or Democrats really excited to vote for you, because even though everybody wants crime to go down, the way it's gone about is the question, I think.
Well, the other problem, too, is that, I mean, I don't think this is just for crime, but crime in particular is something that is, more of a vibe, right? Like, it's much more of a... much less of an actual, let me look at statistics and actually then believe here's what is happening and here's how safe I am. It's much more of like I'm kind of hearing that things are kind of sketchy and I'm a little bit scared, which is very, very different and becomes much less in the control necessarily of those who are operating those levers of power than it is the sort of who's telling us about what is happening around us. And unfortunately, crime is a big seller. So we tend to have a perception, regardless of what the reality is, that crime is bad and increasing, which is a really difficult thing to fight against, especially if you're someone who doesn't want to increase the carceral state and create a much stronger punitive world.
Such a good point. And I just read data that supports your point, but just anecdotally, we all know that when a horrific crime occurs and gets a lot of attention, it makes people think that these types of things are happening more often. But more importantly, the way that media then reports on either that one crime or similar crimes over and over, there's data. I just saw this last week that there is so much more reporting, and I even think it might have just been the New York Times alone they were looking at, much more reporting of crime, even though crime has really not gone that up or stayed the same in certain places. But there's been more reporting of it, which is actually data to support the point you just made. It's not just a feeling. It's really happening that people, and when media reports on it more, people think that there's more crime, as they should.
Right. Absolutely. Now, I saw that same thing, and I think it was just about New York Times. And I think fundamentally it was showing crime decreasing while the reporting of it increased. And therefore, people's sense of safety decreased, which is a real concern. But of course, none of this is necessarily being, run by a particular puppet master with all of our best interests in mind. It is being driven by, what makes money. And fear is a tremendous seller.
Wanted to ask you, for sure. I wanted to ask you if you had any thoughts, serious or comedic, or any other, on cultural question, I will call it, that last week, a couple days ago, Will Smith came out with an apology video where he answered his own questions. Or I guess, to be fair, questions that were being asked a lot. And he put it up on Instagram. And I wonder what you thought of that. I think it's good when there's a high-profile fight between it wasn't a fight between two men. One man attacked another man because he was offended and felt disrespected. And he says, listen, that's not the way to handle things. I think that a lot of time has passed. Probably a stubborn guy. He can argue about how he did it, but I think it's probably a good thing. I just think it's a good thing. Are you going to just shit on the whole idea that I'm even bringing it up in our conversation?
No, not at all. I mean, I didn't watch it. The last thing I saw Will Smith do, I think he was a genie. So, did he do it while wearing the genie makeup? Because that would make me watch it more.
He did strangely do it, dressed as Aladdin, I think. And what was weird is that he never acknowledged that, and no one's even said anything but you that I've heard.
Yeah. Well, that sounds about right. I mean, everyone else wished to never have to see him again. So very few people are even aware that this happened, I think, probably. That's the extent of it. I mean, isn't their whole thing, Will and Jada, that they just overshare their whole lives and every little detail of it? So okay, great. This was, I guess, one detail for today. I don't know though. Who knows what they're gonna share tomorrow? It seems a little. I guess I don't care. I guess is what it is. I'm sorry.
Okay, you talked yourself into actually not even caring about that story.
I did. I'm sorry. Is there a rap about it? Is that the song of the summer?
I think.
Here's what I want to know. What's going on with DJ Jazzy Jeff? That's the story I would like to hear.
Yeah. If anybody deserves an apology.
Watch his Instagram video.
If anybody deserves an apology is what you're saying.
That's right. He's been slapped with irrelevance. It's much worse.
Another cultural question for you. You seem pretty wrapped up in an ice cream taco.
Because I've never had one.
What is this? Taco. Why are people talking about this? And why are you disproportionately talking about it?
I had one tweet.
I believe there have been 2 tweets.
Oh, there's no way. Maybe. No. I don't know. I don't think so. But, it's being discontinued, but it's an ice cream sandwich in a taco shape. I mean, look, let's be clear about one thing. The taco shape is, obviously the best possible food shape.
Oh.
So, if you're going to put ice cream in, you could really do a lot of things. Frankly, it's being wildly overlooked. The amount of things you could do with the taco shape in a food substance. What do we have right now? We have tacos, and then we had this ice cream thing that's going away. I think, all sorts of shells could be made and then stuffed with various other things. And then you can hold it in one hand. Amazing. And just eat it, and the crunch, and then the whatever's inside. It's all brilliant. And I think there should be more taco foods, not fewer.
I was actually, you've got me seriously thinking about this. I am surprised we haven't seen more of a waffle cone as the taco wrapped in some type of ice cream. Just because of the physics of it.
It makes so much sense.
It's not.
I mean, there should be a crouton filled with salad. It should be a salad taco. There should be everything.
Oh wow, a crouton filled with salad.
That's the first thing I thought of. But, don't let me stop you there. Like, the possibilities go on.
I have thought, and I think, that I like croutons more than anyone.
Anyone? Have you been, like, going up to people? Do you walk around like a sizzler and you're just, like, at the salad bar, just being like, how much do you like croutons, dude? No, how much? No, but how much?
I'm not. No, but seriously, I've not seen anybody be like as pleased with the fact that someone is put them on the salad or that they're an option at a salad bar. I feel like, yeah, I love them. I get more excited and like them more than most people. Is that?
I think you just show your excitement more. I think that's all we're learning here. I think you're just more willing to be out about it. I think that most people have it, but they recognize that in order for society to function, they have to hold that joy inside. And you just have you've just bypassed that whole convention.
It is a weird thing. It's funny you said it because it is a weird thing. And maybe I do hold back to be really excited when there are croutons. Oh my God. Like as a 46-year-old man, especially like, oh my God, yes. Woo.
And when they're like house made and they're like the dark and they're like a little bit spongy but crisp, but then like, oh yeah, no, I mean like, look, it's fucking great. I think also like the rest of us are just like, we know we've been disappointed too many times, right? Like we've gotten excited about something, like for instance, a Choco Taco, and then it's taken away from us. So like we've learned that like you can't fucking wear that on your face, man. Like be cool. Just fucking be cool. Maybe they'll bring you more croutons. It's that.
Got it. Loud and clear. Loud and clear. Yeah. Is this true? I know you embellish sometimes or change certain details about things.
I don't know what you're talking about. I'm always completely honest about everything at 100%.
Before you tweet them, like all I'm saying is like to make it work better on Twitter, you'll be like a thing happened at a store and not on the sidewalk. But you tweeted a couple of days ago that at the grocery store, and a man who looked like a farmer Santa stopped another dude wearing a Metallica t-shirt and said, quote, "That shirt makes you look old." And Metallica t-shirt guy said, "I know, but what choice do I have?" And they both shook their heads and walked away in opposite directions. And I started. That's what you wrote on Twitter. And I started to reply, this didn't happen.
100%. It happened exactly like that. It just took me a while to actually like format it into enough characters because I was like, I'm not getting all of this because I was trying to like note their ages. I was in the checkout line and I was placing all my stuff from the basket onto the little conveyor belt. And it happened like right on the other side of it. They were like walking by at my, like, I felt blessed. I felt like, what is happening here? This is magic. Because for 1 second, I'm like, do they know each other? I'm like, oh, they don't know each other. It happened exactly as I speak it. It happened, Pete. It's the truest thing I've ever said.
They must have known each other, though.
They did not know each other. I mean, I guess I don't know that. I guess I can't but they definitely did not seem to know each other. The guy seemed really confused when the Metallica t-shirt guy was like, why is this dude stopping me? And he really did look like Santa. And he was wearing like, what are they called? Suspenders, like had the sort of big belly. And
wow.
I mean, yeah, like jeans, suspenders
and
kind of thing.
And the t-shirt's what made him look old.
That was the Santa guy who was wearing the suspenders. Yeah. And he had like the big white beard.
I'm still having a hard time with that. A man would walk up to another man and tell him that something makes you look old.
I know. It was so weird.
Yeah.
It was such a weird conversation. I can't believe this.
It's hard for me to believe that this happened.
I mean, I think he was trying to like relate to him. He was trying to be like, oh, I would love that t-shirt, man. Like, we're old. We love Metallica. I don't know. He was trying to like bond, I think.
Maybe.
Yeah.
That makes it a little bit, okay, maybe I'm now starting to see it. All right, well, finally, before I let you go, it is the beginning of another week, and I'm going to start asking you this question every time we talk at the beginning of the week. How are we going to get through this one?
Are you growing any drugs anywhere around you? I mean, like that's a shush. No, I'm not actually.
Not this year. No. Unfortunately, I'm having to get them the old fashioned way.
Well, Pete, I think there's only one way, and it's going to be listening to your show.
Yeah. All right. I like it. Well, I was going to say something positive. I was going to say together. That's how we'll get through it.
That's
together.
Basically what I said.
Yeah. Yeah. Mm-hmm. I love it. I like that.
The Pete community.
Yes, the Pete community. Oh, that's scary.
A little bit, especially because the initials are PC, which is going to be a whole host of problems.
No, nobody wants that.
But then if we go Dominic, it's DC. Terrible.
Oh God,
it's all bad.
The PCP, the politically correct Pete Dominic community, everybody. No risks taken. Maura, thank you as always for joining me. I love our conversations, and this one was no exception.
Thank you.
And there you have it, ladies and gentlemen. Maura Quint, how about it? Thank you very much, Maura, and thank you, Dr. Jason Johnson, and thank you for listening. So great to kick up another week with you, and hope that you have some kind of big plans or great plans for August. I don't know. I just wanted to say happy August and stay in the moment, stay in the present. I'll be here along with you for the ride. Check us out on the Discord platform if you're a subscriber. If you aren't, sign up now, standupwithpete.com, and I'll talk to you tomorrow. John Carroll, take us away.
When you're tired of begging, saying pretty please, that's the time you gotta finally get up off of your knees. When you can't see the forest for the burning trees, you got to stand up. Hey, you've been sitting so long, you got the creaky knees, you got to stand up. Stand up. I think you're driving wheels with leaking grease. Boy, you better stand up. Stand up. Well, there's a whole lot more of us who know what's right. They'll keep right on ignoring us if we keep sitting tight. You got to open up the window to let in some light. You got to stand up. That's right. You got to rise up. You got to stand up. You got to stare the devil straight in the eye. We got to let him know it's his turn to go. See it clear when all you hear is a lie. So get up off of your butt, get down off of your fence. And even if it ain't a very friendly audience, well, they'll begin to listen when you start making sense. And you stand up, stand up. No need to point your rifle to defend your town. Just stand up, stand up. You know they can't deny you what you're laying down. Boy, you better stand up, stand up. Show your face of every color, yellow, black, red, and brown. She's the place where every lost child will finally be found. There's only one thing to do before we stand our ground, and that's stand up, stand up. Well, the founding fathers saw a land for all. They had to stand up, they had to stand up. They had a keen imagination for a crystal ball, drawing all the plans of stand up. But all they had to go on was the time they were in, with other causes for laws, and since they weren't even sin, they knew that change was gonna come before the change could begin. They had to stand up. All right, they had to stand up. We got to stand up. We got to look the devil square in the eye. We gotta let him know it's his time to go, and make it clear when all we hear is a lie. Why you lying awake wondering where the money all went? It'll be the cost of freedom that'll go unspent. You can see him flee the scene of that experiment if you stand up. All right, we got to speak up, we got to reach up, and raise your voice in every way you know how. Don't be toes up, you got to show up. Ain't no better time to do it but now. No need to pledge allegiance to no wanton tribe. Rise up and show obedience to the voice inside, and listen well and it'll tell you not to run and hide. It says stand up.